Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about, but in particular that postponement of 4 mayoral elections until, wait for it, 2028. That's after 9 areas saw local elections cancelled earlier this year. Now, the government's been accused of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. What do you reckon it is? Because is it just incompetence? Is it incompetence or subverting democracy? All of the above? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Send a text to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, MBE, is still with us. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. Thank you once again for joining us.
Good morning again.
You and I, we ain't convinced that this is a move by the government, sort of, to make sure that elections go ahead in a very sensible fashion. Postponing 4 mayoral elections by 2 years. I mean, Essex is one area, Hampshire and Solent is the other. We already had a call from Ian in the Isle of Wight going, so Solent is the sea, we're the Isle of Wight. Sussex and Brighton is the other area, and Norfolk and Suffolk as one area. They're combined authorities, and they're supposed to be having mayors for their combined authorities. They were supposed to be held, well, a lot of this was supposed to be done last year, well, earlier this year, but was postponed by Angela Rayner. Remember her? I wonder what she's doing now. And now they've been pushed back by another 2 years from when they were supposed to be held in May next year. Now, the general view is that this is because Labour expect to do very badly in these local elections, as they will in local elections in England, the regional elections, the parliamentary elections in Scotland, and indeed the Assembly elections in Wales. And they're just trying to cut down the damage they're going to get. But I mean, is there any other reasonable explanation for this? No. Other than subverting of democracy?
No, none. The music score that's running underneath the speech that's going to come out from the Minister on Thursday, I believe it is going to be called Running Scared.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Well, yeah, they're going to officially announce it today, but it's already come out. I mean, they're saying this is on the grounds that councils need more time to complete their reorganisation. How long do you need to do this? I mean, really, this is... I mean, I'm sorry, I think you could reorganise an entire country. I pointed out earlier, the fact that we had a 5-year world war, 1939 to 1945, I mean, proper, full, 6 years, right, full-on war, which, so many of the men were conscripted and were away. The whole war effort, the whole country turned to this sole war effort. VE Day on the 8th of May, 1945. 2 months later, we were able to hold a general election across this country and elect a new government. But it's going to take them 2.5 years to do it for a local council election. Give me a break.
Yeah, well, researching a technology that you need to get self-spoiling ballot papers, unless it's just the Labour box that's ticked. That's probably what they need.
But this is the thing. This is the party that would castigate Donald Trump over, vote-fixing claims and all that, and he was wrong about that. I mean, this, I'm sorry, don't...
They've castigated everyone about everything,
syndrome.
Apart from...
They're so waggy finger and judgy. Yeah. This is so blatant. You'd think they'd understand that how bad it would look, even if they were going, look, this is all a bit incompetent. But seriously, if you have officials in this reorganisation of government who can't get their act together enough to get this sorted in a few years' time, those people have no business being employed doing... I mean, I don't want these people even emptying the bins.
Yeah, but you've got a team where, at PMQ's Prime Minister's Questions this week, Keir Starmer stood up and talked about the 22 billion black hole that he inherited, when one of his team a few days beforehand had said that actually they'd come into government with a 10 billion surplus. Yeah. So he's still banging on about something that has been proven to be wrong by his own team. Think through this and think through... He doesn't think through anything.
But I mean, look, the thing is losing... I don't think Labour were going to win in any of these. It's interesting to hear from James Cleverly, the Conservative, on this, talking about this scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. Unlikely that the Tories would have done well. They're expecting terrible election results in May as well. I mean, Reform is likely to be the big winners, possibly the Greens, the Greens, the Lib Dems, Tories and Reform all united on this. But would not having another 4 local elections where Labour have done badly, would that be the difference between Labour and Keir Starmer surviving or not? I mean, no.
Yeah, well,
what difference
I've got a theory behind this. Yes, it would make a difference, because what it would do is it would tell all those constituency MPs whether they're going to be one-shot wonders or not.
In all the different areas.
From May this year. And if they thought they were only going to be one-shot wonders, then they're all going to go out and try and do their own agendas. And
nothing to lose.
Correct. And all of a sudden he would have this backbench that he's now trying to forcibly corral to get votes through, would be going off in so many different directions. He'd lose everything. And then there could be a vote of no confidence in the government much quicker than the next general election when the next general election is due, and he could be thrown out himself much earlier.
That is interesting. Well, it's interesting actually. We've always seen lots of rebellions on. Interestingly, as Chevy Badenoch at PMQs yesterday pointed out, 7 MPs lost the Labour whip last year for voting against voting for an opposition amendment to basically scrap the two-child benefit cap, and now it's become now it's his moral, political, and national, moral mission. But it is interesting. Also, he's had rebellions on many different issues, on welfare and everything else. But crucially, also interesting in that sort of area, Marcus Campbell Savers, who represents the rural constituency of Perth and Solway, he voted against a measure to basically bring in this inheritance tax on family farms. And he's lost the whip. Another 30 Labour MPs decided to abstain, which I think is very interesting. They're just saying, he's basically saying, I can't go back to my constituents and go against something which I told them we wouldn't do, which is great. I'm a big fan of MPs standing by their manifestos.
He's showing moral courage.
Yeah, but he's lost the Labour whip, but he knows he ain't got a chance if he does vote with the government. So he's basically, at the end of the day, I do think there are a lot of politicians who are actually quite moral and want to do the right thing. I don't think they're all ghastly scoundrels. That's not my experience, the people I've met. However, most MPs, when push comes to shove, will try and save their jobs, whether by supporting a government or supporting a leader or by abandoning them. So it's going to be interesting, as you say, to see how they go. So you think actually this is another way of just making sure you've got some areas that don't have a clear message from the electorate, we don't want Labour anymore.
Well, exactly, and therefore it's trying to keep his backbenchers together rather than it affecting the local elections.
Very interesting. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Lots of calls already coming in. You are not happy about this, understandably. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Let's also get back to West Street, the Health Secretary ordering an inquiry into mental health overdiagnosis, ADHD, autism, anxiety, you name it. He has basically ordered a report to be done by next year. It's good that it's only going to be short. That's good to hear. But he says basically he's getting Professor Peter Fonagy. He's a clinical psychologist at University College London, specialising in child mental health, to lead the review. Got a former president of the Royal College of Psychiatry as the vice chair. That's Sir Simon Wesley. These people must know what they're doing. Got more than 500,000 people are on ADHD waiting list. 800,000 in England have been diagnosed with ADHD. But the NHS says the condition remains underdiagnosed and is likely to affect 2.5 million people in total. But here's the thing, affecting you and actually meaning that you can't work or needing benefits or needing other help for your home to be adjusted or something, those are very different things.
Yes.
Because, and again, we know more boys have a lot of these issues than girls because they're more likely to be at the extreme ends of the spectrum. But as you were talking earlier, we're all on this spectrum of, even down to, there's, people getting diagnosed with dyspraxia, which is basically being clumsy. I'm pretty clumsy. I am perfectly capable of walking through an otherwise empty room and there being a chair on the way. I'm perfectly capable of bumping into that chair. It's largely not, I have quite a lot of bruises on my legs quite often, but it's largely not hampered me going through life, and I don't need benefits as a result. And it's amazing. I've met people whose children, they're diagnosed with, dyslexia, dyspraxia, was it dyscalculus or whatever. Maybe they're just an average kid. They're not a brilliant. They're not just a brilliant student, and they're a bit clumsy. That doesn't mean you've got a mental health problem.
Correct, and we overlabel things, and then normal is a spectrum, and that translates then into people getting benefits or getting advantages where they don't need advantages. And I know some people who are way off on the spectrum and are doing extremely well for themselves. I've never been
high performing, high functioning autism.
Very high functioning.
You look at someone like Elon Musk. He's clearly on a spectrum somewhere. It's worked out all right for him.
It's worked all right. Yeah, he's done all right for himself. I bet his mum's proud that he can afford a birthday present for her every now and again.
Now and again, yeah.
Exactly. A bunch of flowers on Mother's Day.
But again, as we were discussing earlier, the important thing is, there are people who genuinely do need help, both children and adults, and they need help for their daily lives, or they cannot work at all, or help in school, and they're not getting it because if 10 kids in the class of 30 say they've got a problem rather than the 2, probably even less than that.
You can't concentrate
focus
your resources on those few that really need it, and that's where it's letting the world down. And costing the taxpayers.
And this is it, that's the thing. People, if you want to have a conversation about this, people go, "Oh, don't you care about those people?" Say, "Yes, I do." But I care about the ones who really need it. Who really need it. And we know that actually the kids who really need it and the adults who really need it often not getting it. I'm always fascinated. It's a big celebrity thing now when they're not having trans children. They're not being non-binary. They keep telling us they're being diagnosed. I finally had my autism or my ADHD diagnosis. You think, well,
why?
What's the point? I've got answers for things. Okay, fine, but what's that going to do? What
makes no difference whatsoever. I look at a sentence and different words that are in there. I can't work out how to pronounce the words because the letters are all jumbled up. They're simple words. No, I could be. I don't know. I've never gone on. I've no interest in going and getting a label on it. I just know that's there.
But even with things like dyslexia, they found out the treatment for the children who were basically illiterate because they hadn't been taught properly, hadn't paid attention in class, and the children who were dyslexic was, apart from the very most severest forms of it, was the same, which was some one-on-one, really, really focused teaching with them. And in so many of these cases, I mean, again, there's really interesting evidence that in terms of autism, now everyone's got autism now. Someone just doesn't look in the eye. They've got autism. I mean, and again, that's a massive spectrum of behaviours and needs or lack of needs. But actually, the number of people who are getting diagnosed as a proportion of the population with severe autism, that massively affects their ability to function in daily life, that has not gone up. But there's a massive explosion in people with mild autism. And what that would tell you, because if it was just that it was being underdiagnosed and we need to diagnose it more, you would have seen more of the severe kinds. And we're not seeing more of it.
There's a bigger issue here as well. And Wes Streeting's investigation might get into that because over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the general age that couples have children, and you need a couple, a man and a woman, to have a child, has gone up. And they're finding that is affecting that is affecting the genetics in the egg and the sperm that come together, and therefore that could be leading to it. So it's important to understand that and get things in place. But it doesn't automatically mean it doesn't.
I think there's a lot of people who are poor who are wanting to get a lot of benefits for their kids, and there are a lot of middle class parents who want to game the system for their kids and get extra time in exams. And I'm sorry, and you're all deeply immoral because you're actually stopping the kids who really need it, and actually what your kids need is just a bit more, perhaps love, attention, routine. You know what? If you want to be take your kid to the park and kick a ball with them, for the love of God. Do some proper parenting, people. I think this is a really big issue. So we can focus on the people. I'm not in any way saying there aren't people with these issues need help, but we would like to help those people. Here's the thing: do you have any faith that Wes Streeting, who apparently thinks that there is something called trans children and they need to have puberty blockers because he's allowing that trial? Well, I mean, that's a mental health problem. That's not a real thing, but so I've got very big issues there. Do we genuinely think that he's going to do anything about it? Because at the end of the day, if you can't cut any benefits at all, and when you say you're having welfare reform from Prime Minister, you've actually spent an extra 16 billion allowing more people to swing the lead, and you're giving parents who don't make right choices about how many children to have and don't go out to work full time, both of them, and then need us to give them an extra £3.5 grand per kid of the universal credit child benefit. I'm sorry. Do we have any expectation at all that they'll go, right, it's being overdiagnosed, we are now going to stop the benefits to the people who've been overdiagnosed?
I've got a very long...
Don't believe for a nanosecond.
I've got a very long and intellectual answer to that. No.
There we go. This is why we have him on. Let's also talk about those live facial recognition cameras. We spoke about those the last half hour, planned for every town centre. Now, you were telling me an interesting story in the news break about them already. I mean, we've already got a lot of these cameras in shops.
We have. In shops, in hospitality, in our petrol station forecourts and all the rest of it. There's a company called FaceWatch has been rolling them out across the board. They're controlled by those commercial entities. And if you look at the statistics of where they put them out, and this is indicative of what we'll likely see elsewhere, there has been a 35% reduction in theft. There's been a 24% reduction in overall crime. And the really important one, I think, is a 17% reduction in violence against staff in retail and hospitality premises and all the rest of it. So it's clear they do work, because the criminals then go to somewhere else where they're not there.
So they work in those stores, but that's the same thing about, well, why can't Waitrose and Tesco and Sainsbury's pay for their security guards? And well, fine. So people then don't shop from shoplift from those stores, but then they go to the little shop down the road that can't afford a security guard.
But the reason why you put an alarm on your house,
burgle over there,
is to go.
Don't burgle me, burgle over there.
And therefore, what this is doing.
When you say it works, what do you mean? It works because they go and shoplift or burgle from somewhere else.
Well,
but that doesn't mean it's working. It just means someone else is the victim.
It's also resulting in where the criminals do go into these places, an awful lot more crime being taken to the courts and individuals being prosecuted. But if you then that's somewhere else, if you reduce that ability to go somewhere else by having it in the public spaces that are in between the shops, where it can be identified and the police can then go in and deal with them, then that's putting more bobbies on the beach.
In my local high street, and my God, I've spoken to a lot of, lived there for a long time, spoken to an awful lot of the shopkeepers about that. They say there's no issue with knowing who the shoplifters are. They know, they literally have the door, they have someone standing on the door ready to close the door when they know that people are coming in, because they know the police won't arrest. They have had the people in the store. They've literally got their wallets. They've got their identity. They know their names, their addresses, and the police do nothing. Now, they say they're doing more now, but they're not doing much more. They know who the people are already. They're just not sodding prosecuting them. Sorry for that.
It is, but to do it now, you to have that evidence, the police then need to get it. They then need to go and get a warrant from a judge. And this is all paperwork filling in and all that. That warrant then needs to go and they put a team together. They then get a briefing. They then go to the front door and try and arrest the individual. The individual isn't there because they've moved around. So they have to go away and repeat and rinse and repeat. Whereas if this
do police work? How dare we ask them to do police work?
Whereas if you have this facial recognition software, if you've got an individual walking down the high street and is there and you've got Bobby around the corner, Bobby can go and nick him without doing all that other stuff beforehand. You're saving huge amounts of police time.
It's a good excuse for police just standing around the street corners doing not very little, if you ask me.
There aren't enough police to stand around the street corners.
Well, I saw it in Oxford Street some months back. Genuinely, there were 12 police officers there, and I'm going, is this a good use of your resources, gentlemen? And that was the view that it was not. I wanted to squeeze in one more topic. We've had all these protests against asylum hotels, although, again, I'm not entirely sure getting all these illegal migrant arrivals out of hotels and putting them in local hostels and in the house next door to you is perhaps the solution, because that's what they're going to do. But we've also had the government say they're going to get them out of hotels, they're going to put them into camps. Of course, when we say we want them in camps, what we mean is camps that are completely sealed up so that they can't get out.
Armed guards.
That's not what they mean.
Exactly.
And we've had these protests, of course, out in Epping and in Wapping and goodness knows where, but also, crucially, in Crowborough in East Sussex, where we've had, thousands turned out at the weekend. Yet again, many demonstrations they've had about turning that camp into accommodation for asylum-seeking men by the end of this month. And on Wednesday night, the town's number 8 detachment of cadets paraded for the last time at the camp. It was previously used by the British and Canadian military during the First and Second World Wars, but the cadets have now been ordered to leave their training camp. So it's not like it's an abandoned camp. In order to leave it, to make way for 600 small boat migrants. And the argument given by the Ministry of Defence is because the government takes the safety and well-being of all cadets extremely seriously. And as the leader of the Pink Ladies anti-migrant group in Crowborough said, these are the protesters, this is Jeanette Towie, it's a terrible shame and appalling indictment of the government that our cadets are being forced out of their long-standing base to make way for 600 undocumented fighting-age men that we know nothing about. If the MOD thinks it's unsafe for cadets, how come the Home Office thinks it's safe for exactly the same children if they're in the town? It's a fair question.
Very fair question. I know that camp well. I've stayed there before when I was a cadet. And you're moving the cadets to somewhere else isn't really going to affect the cadets. They'll be given somewhere else to go to. But it's that bit of the Ministry of Defence saying it's unsafe for children to be around these individuals.
These are teenagers, basically.
12 up, to be around these undocumented fighting-age men. I
wonder why.
And the camp is in a quiet little village, and therefore the impact that's going to have on the village.
It's not in the middle of nowhere. It's right next to a tiny little village. Well, we're going